So you say. Good evening, everybody. I'm Pam Barton, the coordinator for the Northern Virginia and DC chapter of CHAD. And I want to welcome you to all of you to this last lecture in our ADHD Resource Fair, which is teaching problem solving to children and adults with ADHD with our speaker, Dr. Dan Shapiro. This resource fair has taken place every Tuesday in October to honor ADHD Awareness Month, with our last event, a virtual resource fair, which will be happening on Tuesday, October 26th from 7 to 9 p.m. Here, attendees will have the opportunity to meet professionals of all kinds and learn more about their services. Shannon McCarty, learning specialist and academic coach, and Shannon Titmus, special ed teacher, will be providing the opening remarks and sharing their knowledge of supports and resources for ADHD students. We are adding new exhibitors every day, so stay tuned for more services being offered on the 26th. If you're new to CHAD, let me take just a few minutes to tell you about us. CHAD's a nonprofit organization started in 1987 by a group of parents that wanted to do something about the lack of support the schools are providing for their ADHD children. From there, it has blossomed into a nationwide organization with chapters throughout the United States. Our chapter provides various supports to our ADHD community, which you can see listed behind me. We are all volunteers and cover our expenses through membership, dues, donations, and sponsors. If you're not already a member, please consider becoming a member today. Tonight, before I introduce our great speaker, I would like to take a moment to highlight and thank sponsors for our presentation. Hold on just a second, I gotta go there. Nope, that's not the current slide. Let's go back. Okay. I'd like to introduce the Ross Center as one of our sponsors. The Ross Center is a premier outpatient mental health practice delivering a full spectrum of sophisticated psychiatric and psychological service for children, adolescents, and adults for the past 30 years. Their staff of nationally and internationally known child, adolescent, adult, and forensic psychiatrists provide psychiatric evaluations and medication treatment. The Ross Center's therapists specialize in cognitive behavior therapy, dialectic behavior therapy, and other evidence-based modalities, with expertise in treating ADHD in children, adolescents, and adults. Other services they offer is psychological testing, including neuropsychological testing, psychoeducational evaluations, autism assessments, social emotional assessments, and forensic evaluations. In addition, the Ross Center offers comprehensive adolescent DBT program based in their Virginia offices. The Ross Center has 3 offices, one in Washington, D.C., one in Tyson's Corner, and one in New York City. Learning RX. Studies show that the majority of learning difficulties are caused by cognitive skills that just need strengthening. The brain uses 7 core skills to learn efficiently. If some brain skills aren't strong enough, the learning process can be tough and overwhelming. Learning RX can help you to identify the root cause of learning challenges, and through its unique one-on-one brain training programs, enhance cognitive functions in individuals of all ages from 5 to 85. They can help children and adults rediscover the learner beneath the labels, making learning easier, boosting courage and confidence, and improving cognitive performance of all clients with many diagnoses, including ADHD. Commonwealth Academy is a college preparatory school that embraces students of average to gifted abilities who have ADHD, executive functioning challenges, and mild learning differences. In an inclusive, caring community, they empower their students to thrive and discover their path to excellence with small class sizes and differentiated instructions. Pathfinder Coaching and Tutoring founder Pat Hudak is a credentialed board certified coach. Recognized as one of the top 60 remote coaches in the US, Pat provides virtual coaching to families affected by ADHD and executive functioning challenges. Elementary through college-age students, parents, and adults have benefited from Pat's coaching for 15 plus years. Additionally, she is honored to serve as the President, National Board of Directors of CHAD. Welcome, Ms. Pat. The Bethesda Chevy Chase Counseling and Assessment Associates provides various services in the Bethesda, Maryland area, from child to adolescent adult psychotherapy, couples and family counseling, psychoeducational assessments, and they have a program called Stepping Stones for Success. So do look them up, and thank you for that. And let's see, we're getting closer to our presentation. Let's see. Now I'd like to introduce our speaker, Dan Shapiro. Dr. Dan Shapiro is a developmental behavioral pediatrician and the creator of the Parent-Child Journey, providing parent training and support programs in the greater Washington area, as well as internationally online. In addition to being instrumental in his collaborations with educators for dozens of area schools, Dr. Shapiro has authored numerous articles and 3 books: Parent-Child Journey, an individualized approach to raising your challenging child; Parent-Child Excursions, ADHD, Anxiety, and Autism; and Ralph's Tale, a children's book on developmental differences. I would like to ask that all of you attending tonight would be, if you have any questions, to put it in the chat and or raise hands. Dr. Shapiro has indicated he's interested in answering in real-time questions, but we do need a little order. There's so many of you out there. So if you could do the raise hand emoji or type your questions into chat, that would be very helpful to our board members who are going to be monitoring that. So without further ado, I welcome Dr. Dan Shapiro.
Thank you very, very much. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you CHAD people, and I really appreciate the invitation. It's a great organization I'm proud to support. Tonight, we're going to be focusing on non-pharmacologic support for kids with ADHD, in particular, collaborative problem solving. Those of you who are familiar with Ross Green's work will recognize a lot of what I'm going to present, but I'm customizing it so that it's, I think, more relevant to kids and teenagers with ADHD. So you'll find the material for tonight's lecture is in the 7th chapter of my Parent-Child Journey book, which is the basis for my parent training programs. A new semester is starting in the winter, probably early February. So those of you who are interested can go to the website parentchildjourney.com for an elaboration, a discussion group based upon this book. And again, the material tonight's largely taken from there. My second book, Parent-Child Excursions, has an in-depth discussion about ADHD medication management, but also how it commonly overlaps with anxiety, autism, and there is additional discussions about social development and the overlap between developmental difference and gender variation. So I hope some of you will check out the books. And why don't we plunge right in here? And I'm going to just mention that any discussion of non-pharmacologic treatment of ADHD has to address the importance of pharmacologic treatment. We're not going to talk about medicine tonight, but there are serious consequences of failure to treat ADHD with medication. I've listed.
Dan, I'm sorry.
I was muted that whole time.
No, just for a few minutes or a second.
Okay. Okay, I'm unmuted again here. You guys good on that end?
Yes, we are. Thank you.
Okay, very good. So I was saying that we're going to focus on non-pharmacologic treatment, but I want to emphasize that pharmacotherapy, medication management of ADHD, is a cornerstone of treatment. Medication by itself is never a total treatment plan. It should be part of a comprehensive plan. But there are serious considerations if you don't treat adequately with medication. So I'm a Russell Barkley fan. His quote from The Nature of Self-Control, the idea that human self-control is largely self-determined and largely instilled by one's parents during childhood should be discarded on history's conceptual scrap heap. Until such time as more effective treatments having even fewer side effects have been scientifically identified. The use of stimulant medication as part of a larger treatment package for the management of ADHD should be a first line and mainstay treatment without apology. So I'm going to make that strong statement and quote a Barclay strong statement as we shift to non-pharmacologic proper management. It's always in concert with proper medication management. So ADHD can be thought of as a problem with pausing. And so Rollo May, who said human freedom is about the capacity to pause between stimulus and response, you can think of ADHD as pause deficit disorder, difficulty being able to stop and think. People often say ADHD is not a disorder of knowing what to do, rather it's a disorder of doing what you know, being able to inhibit those reflex responses and act according to our best judgment. So teaching children how to do problem solving is really teaching them how to pause. I call it stop and think training. And we'll go through how that happens. So Martin Seligman, a father of positive psychology, did experiments on dogs and life insurance salesmen and Olympic hopefuls. And I refer you to his wonderful book, Learned Optimism. And the conclusion of his book is that optimism can be learned, just as pessimism can be learned. And when we're talking about problem solving with kids and thinking about our own ability as parents to create change, we need to make sure we're not stuck in pessimistic thinking. Pessimistic thinking is about the 3 Ps. If we think that, hey, this is personal, I'm somehow flawed, it's not just an unlucky situation. We think that it's permanent. It's not just about what's happening now, but it's forever. It's not about just this goal, but it's pervasive across all goals. Then we're stuck with pessimistic thinking, and we've got self-fulfilling prophecies about our inability to affect change and our inability to teach our children. We don't want to pass that down to our children. We'd like them to inherit from us, or we'd like to model for them a more optimistic style of framing problems as situational, as temporary setbacks, and as pertaining to one goal, not all goals. So problem statement does tap into Carol Dweck's now famous work on mindsets. We, in formulating a problem, don't want to have a fixed mindset. It's just the way I am. I'm stuck with it. Either I'm able or I'm not. There's no capacity for growth. We want that growth mindset, that through effort we can change, we can make things somewhat better than they are, and if we just work through it. So that's the philosophical backdrop for tonight's presentation. It's Martin Seligman about optimism and Carol Dweck about growth mindset. If we don't have that, we don't have much. Now, these steps are borrowed with respect from Philip Kendall, but it's common to all of cognitive behavioral therapy, the idea that you break problems down. First, say what the problem is, think about all possible solutions, examine each possible solution, pick the best solution, then see how it works. And I teach all of my patients these steps, and they memorize what the STEPS stands for. They practice it, they learn to apply it first to small problems and then to progressively larger problems. So we want to talk about tonight how to do these steps, how to teach these steps, how to help kids practice these steps across a whole range of problems. So this is the topic for tonight. So we want to make sure when we're teaching steps that we think developmentally, take the child's ADHD into account. How are we going to approach this in a customized way for this child, given their impulsivity, distractibility, hyperactivity? ADHD can interfere with problem solving. That's why we need to teach it much more deliberately. And we need to think also, of course, of chronological age, language skills, cognitive level, etc. So at very least, parents can learn how to do these steps about their own problems. If you don't know how to do it for yourself, it's going to be hard to teach it to your child. So at very least that. But then as kids come along, parents can do it on behalf of their very young children or kids who have developmental difficulties. At least then we have the parents applying these problem-solving steps to their children. The next developmental step is for parents to do problem-solving, do these steps in collaboration with young children or developmentally not quite ripe yet kids, and meet them where they're at. But then gradually the parent can fade their support, fade their involvement, and the children can learn these steps so well that they internalize them and apply them to their own problems. And then one of these days, if you're at the stage of life that I'm at, we look for our kids to do some problem solving on our behalf. So it comes full circle if we're lucky. Now, very, very important right now for everybody on the call, on the Zoom, to think, where is my child developmentally? Where am I going to be starting? What's my entry point for teaching and having realistic expectations about my child's ability to learn these problem-solving steps? So we're going to start with simple problems, just to learn the steps. And sometimes I'll just start with tic-tac-toe. Hey, what's the problem? What are the possible solutions? Examine each one, pick the best one, see how it works. Tic-tac-toe, or what are we going to have for dinner? Or what are we going to do this weekend? We don't have to start with the most complicated, loaded topics that present themselves. Start with the 101 course before you go to the PhD level course in problem solving. For kids who are impulsive, Philip Kendall has a manual on how to help kids slow down and do the S, the T, the E, the P, the S. Make sure you do each step. He starts them off with 10 pennies. And if you do each of the steps in the problem solving process, if you don't go too fast, and if you pick good answers, you keep all your pennies. Each time there's a rule infraction where you skip a step or go too fast or don't give a thoughtful answer, then you lose a penny. It's a way to give kids with ADHD immediate feedback about whether they're doing the problem-solving process in a self-regulated way. So then we can move along, once the kids master it, to the bigger problems. And we're not going to do problem solving for every little problem that comes up. Things that happen once every few months, no. We're going to do it for things that happen regularly, that are meaningful to the child. The parent is motivated, the child is motivated to sit down and go through this. It's not for every little thing that comes up. So this by way of backdrop. When we set the stage for problem solving, the first thing, and this is Ross Greene's gift to us all, is the empathic response, actually based on Carl Rogers, those of you who want to go to psychological roots, where we just validate the feelings of the child. We want to individualize our empathic response. Some kids don't do well with a very talkative parent describing the child's feelings. The kids react, they want a more muted, nonverbal approach, which can just be facial expression, body language, just softening, making ourselves small, communicating to the kids nonverbally that we are in their corner, we understand how they're feeling, and we want to be in touch with a child's negative emotions. Giving empathy around a negative emotion, I want to kill you, I hate you, other such things, does not validate a plan. It just validates the feeling. So there's a big difference between being empathic and endorsing an expression that's negative. So the trick here is to get traction through empathy. Consider your own reactivity, get out of your own head, unclutter your mind, meet your child where they're at, then you get that traction, and you can then work with the child when we have them feeling like, hey, we really understand. This cognitive dissonance idea is, hey, the world as it is now, is it the way you want it to be? How about the world as you would like it to be? Let's create a dissonance between status quo and your goals. This is what motivational interviewing is, where we help the child express what their goal is, even if it's to get the parent to stop nagging. That's their formulation of the problem. Fine. How are we going to get from here to there? And that way the child is internally driven to solve the problem rather than us saying, hey, you've got a problem. We want to formulate the problem in terms that are meaningful to the child. And choose the right time. Don't do this when your child's involved with a video game. It's when there's a downtime. You might have to schedule an appointment to make sure everybody's got their heads on it. We might have a bowl of ice cream or popcorn or something. If there's sibling conflicts, we might do shuttle diplomacy, have one kid in one room, the other in another room, so that we can do some family problem solving if bringing them to the peace table when they're still loaded for bear isn't going to work very well. So this is setting the stage for problem solving before we get into the specific steps. It's empathy, picking the right time, be mindful of these kind of technique issues. So let me pause here for a moment and see if there are any questions right off the bat, and then we'll get into the specifics of how to do these problem solving steps and how to teach them. Any questions in the chat box, or anybody want to raise a hand or just shout out? I hope I've been unmuted this whole time.
You have. There are no questions in the chat box yet.
Okay. Well, we'll get into it. Don't be shy, everybody. If you want to raise a hand or just light up with the video or put something in chat, I like to be interrupted. There's Niles. Wonderful. Niles, go right ahead. If you unmute yourself, I'm all ears for you. Did you unmute, Niles?
Oh, sorry about that. So in the chat box, someone just said they wanted to see the steps page again, and I actually would love to see that as well as a little bit more description about the 10-penny solution by Kendall.
Yeah, so I'm going to go in. Thanks a lot, Niles. I'm going to go through the steps in detail. So there's going to be a whole lot of steps flashing in front of you. So we're going to plunge in deep. For the let me circle back to the pennies thing after I present the steps. I think it'll be more meaningful. But the idea, just a little preview of it, is if you don't do what I'm about to describe, slowly, if you skip a step, if you don't give a carefully considered answer, then the 10 pennies I gave you at the beginning of the problem solving session are yours to lose. This is called cost response behavior modification in behaviorist lingo. And the idea here is you get some negative feedback. You lose a penny if you don't do the steps technique well enough. If you go too fast, if you skip a step, if you give a poorly considered answer, if any of those things happen, you lose 1 penny. Now, the pennies at the end of a session could be worth something. Each penny could be worth a certain amount of money or points towards a reward. This is to modify the child's behavior within the problem-solving session. It's just a nice little ancillary move for kids who have no motivation whatsoever to even engage in the problem solving. I use it sparingly for poorly motivated kids. It comes in real handy. But for the most part, if we are identifying a problem that is a problem for the child, and again, entering the problem through the child's window, hey, what is the issue for you, kiddo? Not the parent's imposition of the issue, but the child's view of the issue. Then hopefully motivation is more natural. More on that to follow as well. So thanks, Niles. Good question there. So let me plunge in to the meat of what I wanted to talk about here. I'm going to share the screen again here, and we'll get the bigger screen on like that. So the first S, and just to review here, why can't I go backwards? Huh. Well, I can't go backwards for some reason. There. I can go backwards now. Okay, here are the steps. So thanks, Niles. STEPS. We're going to go through each of these at a time, one at a time, okay, to show you how it works. So those are the steps. And this is all in the book and online on my website, on the Excursions page on my website. You'll see a video. This video is going to be available to all of you as well, as I understand it. So the first S is for say what the problem is, or stop and say what the problem is. You can do it either way. And when we're formulating the problem, again, we want to avoid the pessimistic generalizations that Martin Seligman warns us about. So the 3 Ps, again, we don't want to frame the problem as something that's permanent, about the child's hardwiring, or about all goals. It's going to be a temporary setback. It's not about you, it's about the situation, and it's about this goal, not about your entire life plan. So we don't allow in the problem statement the words always, nobody, everybody, nowhere, everywhere, never. These are words that imply one of the 3 Ps. So I joke with the kids, we never say never when we're doing a problem formulation. Instead, hey, let's do the W's. So if we're getting kids to define problems in specific, time-limited, short-term, solvable terms, then we do the W's. Hey, what's the problem? Who are you having it with? Where does it happen? When does it happen? And why is it a problem for you? That's how you state a problem in solvable terms. Do the W's like a journalist. The H is, how bad is it really? And here's where we want to avoid black and white thinking about problem statements, or 0 or 10 thinking. We want to create gray zones, the numbers 1 through 9, not just 0s and 10s. A lot of kids and parents will think if it's not heaven, it's hell. But most problems have to do with earthly matters. They are the numbers in between. So we say, hey, how bad is it? 0 to 10. 0 means no problem. 10 is we're all going to die. 1 to 3 is mild. 4 to 6 is medium. 7 to 9 is bad. If your kid likes numbers. If they can't process that many numbers, we might just use 0 to 3. 0 is no problem. 1 is little, 2 is medium, 3 is big. Or we could use those words, little, medium, big problem. Or we can use face emojis. If 5 emojis are too much for your child's development, we can use just 3 emojis, happy, neutral, sad. Thumbs, traffic lights. I have some kids who use different dinosaurs to represent how bad a problem is. One musical savant patient of mine would play a major chord for no problem, a 7th for a little problem, a minor 7th for a medium problem, and a minor chord for a big problem. And I would ask him, hey, how bad is it? And he would respond on my keyboard. So you speak the language of the child when you're rating the severity of the problem. It's important to customize our approach here and don't assume that the child can't think in these terms. Sometimes they just need the right language. And we do a problem statement from the child's perspective, but also from the parent's perspective. I'm going to circle back to this to teach collaborative problem solving. Hey, it's not just your problem. It's not just my problem. It's our problem. This gets away from the authoritarian parenting, but it doesn't cave to the permissive parenting. This is authoritative parenting, where it's our way, not your way, not my way. It's both of our problems. It's a family system issue. And bear with me, everybody, but I'll show you how we address the child's perspective and the parent's perspective of the problem in parallel as we go through this model. So a little sneak preview of that, more to follow, okay? So let's buzz through this here. We're going to first describe this, then I'm going to give you an example and show you how it works. So when we think about, first we have the problem statement, then we think about all possible solutions. Here's where anything goes. We might have to scaffold this and help the kids, the younger kids, come up with some solutions. But if we can't come up with a long enough list, we might say, phone a friend, go online, get some other resources, good ideas, bad ideas, We do not say that's a good idea or a bad idea during the T step. This is just brainstorming. We don't want to shut down the brainstorming process. We always are going to list the status quo. How are things now? Well, we could continue fighting with each other about screen time. That's one thing we could do, but let's see what other possible solutions are. That way we create that discrepancy again between status quo and possible futures, and this motivates change. Examining each possible solution comes next. Hey, if you had a crystal ball, if you looked at each possible solution, what if you did this, what would happen? What if you did this, what would happen? And again, we use our rating scales, the numbers, the faces, the thumbs, the lights, to say, hey, this is excellent, very good, good, okay, bad, or stinks in different terms. And then if a child's 0 and 5ing me, or a parent is rating everything as either a 0 or a 5, I say, well, you know, looks like you're 0 and 5ing me. Not everything is excellent or stinks. Most solutions are somewhere in between. Where are your 1, 2, 3s, and 4s? And we teach nuanced thinking about solutions, not just about statement of the problem. And we're going to accept each person's opinion. This is about finding common ground. It's not about trying to convince the other person that your solution is better. More on that to follow. Just the layout first. After we've rated each solution, we're going to pick the best one by looking to see if we can find some consensus, accepting compromise. If it's not mutual, it's not going to be durable. If it's not a good solution for child and parent, or child and sibling, whoever's involved in the problem solving, or whoever's involved in the problem, if it's not mutual, it's not going to last. So we're going to look for common ground. This is democracy in action. This is how Congress should work. We can at least practice it in our homes. And then once we do pick a solution based on our ratings, we're going to say, hey, what will happen if we do this? Let's run an experiment. Let's see how it goes for a week. Let's evaluate. So we don't have a perfectionist mindset about problem solving. Oh, it didn't work this week. Oh, then we can't do anything about it. We're stuck with it. We want to normalize temporary setbacks about our problem solving process, so that inevitably, when it doesn't work perfectly, we say to kids, well, that's expected. Back to the drawing board. Let's see if we can make things better than they were. So in action, I'm going to run through an example, and then I'm going to stop for questions. Okay. So here's example number 1. Screen battle between Timmy and his mom. So, Mom, time to get off that video game. Timmy, I'm not done yet. Mom, if you don't turn that screen off by the time I count to 5, no screens for a week. Timmy, no reply. Ignores his mom, continues to play. Mom says, that's it, young man. I'm taking away your iPad. Timmy says, I hate you. You're the worst mom in the world. I don't know if this sounds familiar to any of you. So instead of that power struggle, this is how it can go with this approach. Mom, same thing, time to get off that video game. Timmy, same, I'm not done yet. But this time, instead of escalating, instead of getting into that power struggle, Mom softens her tone, her body language, and she responds with empathy. I know you hate it when I ask you to stop playing. That must be really frustrating for you. And then the mom pauses. The pause is the most underutilized tool in the parenting kit. The pause communicates to the child that, hey, it's your turn to respond. And I'm going to respect your need, maybe for some time to figure out how you want to respond. I'm not just going to keep at you with more and more words and put you on the defensive. But Timmy does keep playing, but he kind of glances in Mom's direction. She realizes that she's done a good job of avoiding escalation. She's de-escalated. He feels felt, he feels understood. And Mom recognizes timing is key. He's on his video game. Temporarily, I'm not going to try to solve this problem because that would result in more friction. I'm going to say deliberately, not right now, Timmy, but let's pick a time to talk later. I bet, and this is a raw screen line, if we put our heads together, we can come up with a good solution. an expression of optimism, and then she walks away. And she's thinking to herself, well, I stayed out of that quicksand, stayed out of that battle, but I am going to return to this issue at a good time with that bowl of ice cream and say, hey, remember when we were talking about the video game thing? I think now might be a good time to talk about it. Is this a good time for you? Timmy says, no, well then let's make an appointment and set a time, because I'm pretty sure we can work this out together. So this is how we get that traction. And now plugging this screen problem into our steps. First, we avoid those pessimistic generalizations. Timmy is coached to avoid saying, you never let me do anything I want. And mom has to remember not to say, you're going to rot your brain and your body and drive me crazy too. Instead, we do the 5WH. Timmy and mom both say that they get frustrated, even angry with each other when mom wants to have a family dinner and Timmy wants to keep playing video games. 0 to 10, they both give it an 8. It's a pretty big problem. So they've both defined the problem, but in their own terms. And then they both think about possible solutions. This doesn't have to happen all in one sitting. We could just do the problem statement, the S, and then say, okay, let's think about solutions and get together again about it later today or tomorrow for kids with short attention spans. And here's a list that Timmy and mom came up with. I suggest the parents always ask the kids first what the ideas they have, and always list that status quo right up top. Keep having arguments, stay angry, frustrated. We could just keep doing what we're doing. Timmy offers no limits, no rules. Mom says, well, we could have no screens at all, and back and forth they go. And then we get into some more realistic suggestions about solutions that might be okay with both parties, mom and Timmy. A daily max, so 1 hour off screens earns 1 hour on screens. Rules broken mean no screens tomorrow. Parent electronic controls, no screens on one day of the week. Other days, no rules, except for certain issues like school, chores, sleep, and dinner. So this is a problem. So this is a solutions list. But notice nobody during this process commented whether it was a good idea or a bad idea. Only after we've done all of our brainstorming do we examine each possible solution. So if somebody starts saying, well, I've got a good idea, I, in a therapy session, will say, right now, we're not going to comment on whether it's a good idea or a bad idea. Remember the rules. Or if somebody says, well, that's a stupid idea, I say, remember, we're not going to comment. We're just going to list, because we want just to put everything down there, good ideas and bad ideas. That way we'll have the longest list possible. Now that we've got all of our solutions down, and if we ran out of ideas, again, we might ask the other parent or a teacher, whoever else is involved with the problem to come up with other solutions. Once that list is complete, then and only then do we rate them. 0 stinks, 1 is bad, 2 is okay, 3 is good, 4 is very good, 5 is excellent. And you can see that first Timmy rates and then mom. I always have the kids go first. And I ask each person to pretend they're in a soundproof booth. They can't hear the other one's answer, and to be honest. And there's no debates allowed. We're not going to try to convince the other person that their number is wrong. Each person is entitled to their number. And you can see how this starts to play out, where there's some all over the map kind of ratings. After they've given their ratings, and only after, then we pick the best solution. And I, with the computer or with a highlighter, will put in red anything where either partner has a 0 or a 1. 0 stinks, 1 is bad. So if one person puts a 0 and the other person puts a 5, it doesn't matter who put the 0 and who put the 5, that's not going to be a mutual solution, and therefore it's not going to be durable. So we go all the way down, red for anything with a 0 or a 1. This is supposed to be yellow, but it didn't show up very well on the screen here, so I made it brown. Yellow means maybe, 2 means okay. All right, so these are okay, but the green, the one where both parties in the problem-solving exercise had a 3 or better, is the 1 day off, and then no rules. That appealed to mom and it appealed to Timmy. So here is our best solution. Sometimes you have more than one solution that's in green. And you can then say, hey, good, we've got a little menu to choose from, or we could use a combination of solutions. Sometimes you might not have anything in green and you're stuck with a yellow, or sometimes everything is in red. Everybody is so negative. And then I say, well, it looks like we didn't come up with a satisfactory solution this time. I guess that means we'll take a break from the problem solving. It doesn't mean a permanent failure. It's a temporary setback in our problem solving process. And let's think about some more possible solutions, maybe cast our net wider in terms of research. But once we have a solution, here we did, then we see how it works. And this is the most important step. It's the most neglected, to agree 1 week later, let's sit down and evaluate how it is. We can put our numbers again, see if the numbers we put in prediction of how well it worked were in fact how well it worked. And if your number is the same as you thought, great. If it's better, great. If it's lower, well, then I guess that solution didn't work as well as we thought. And we might have to modify how we do it, or go back to the drawing board. And that's okay. That happens with problem solving. The best solutions are ones that get worked out over time. So that is how you do some problem solving and teach kids the steps. So here's where I've got another example I can walk through, but first I'd love it if you all have questions or problems that we would plug in to the steps. And what kind of problems do you anticipate with the problem solving? And what kind of issues would you like to plug into this? Do you think this approach would lend itself to? So at this point, those of you who are comfortable to light up your videos so we can get a sense of community here, see some faces. If you're not comfortable with that, if you weren't expecting to be on camera, totally fine, no pressure. But anybody who can and is willing to put on their videos, it gives a different vibe on that screen. Thank you, those of you who are doing it. I'll encourage more of you. And so we'll see as many faces as possible and personalize this interaction some, okay? Now, if you don't have your video on, you still can raise your hand electronically. For most of you, that's the reactions button at the bottom. Some of you at participants, you can raise your hand, or in the chat box, if we have our Chad trollers looking there. But Ray, I see you've got a hand up. Please go right ahead.
All right, so I have two things. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, speak up. Your mic's a little bit fuzzy, but we're good enough.
Is this any better?
Good enough. Go for it.
Okay. All right, great. So thank you for this presentation. It's been helpful already, and I'm excited to try some of these things, or at least incorporate them in what I've been trying so far. I have one question and also a scenario. So the question is about the see how it works piece. I wasn't clear. Were you saying just give a new rating for how it's working after you've tried it for a week or a few days or whatever the time period is? Is that it? Just both the parent and the child give a rating and that's it? And then if you're happy with the rating, then you keep it. And if you're not, then you come up with new solutions. Is that right?
Simple as that, Ray. Yep, simple as that.
Okay.
Yeah,
great.
And of course we go beyond the number to have each person explain why they gave the number that they did, how, and kind of recall what the week was like. We might agree in advance when we're implementing a solution to how we're going to measure success. It might be by the number of arguments we have this week. It might be, by how well you were able to accomplish your goal. So it's nice to have some measurable outcomes. They're semi-quantitative, beyond just the vibe in the house. But on this screen example, it might be the number of arguments we have about screens this week. That I think would be an important indicator of success.
Great, thank you. And that is a great example because that one comes up in our home quite a bit.
And not just in your home, but
yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. Another example that to consider at least is we're trying to work through the tracking of and the completion of homework assignments.
Yeah.
There's some accountability, ball dropping, frustrating for me pattern of, okay, you say you don't have homework or you don't have X kind of homework, and then I find out the night before it's due or after it's been due that you did indeed have that homework and you didn't track or you didn't do it or you hid it or whatever it is. So that's an issue I'm trying to work through right now.
Yeah. So we'd say, not right when it's homework time, but we'd say, hey, we noticed that we've been getting on your case about your homework, and you don't like that very much, and probably, I guess, you don't like homework, at all. And I thought, we could talk about kind of busting this homework problem and working out some solutions that'll work for you and will allow us to step back and chill. And is this a good time to talk about it, or do you want to talk about it another time? What do you think? Is it your son or daughter, Ray? What do you think?
That's more so for my son.
Yeah. What would he say if you kind of approached him that way, that, hey, this is a real pain for you, I get it. What about talking it through? How would he respond to that?
Depends on the mood and the timing. But yeah, there may be times that he'd be open to that.
Yeah. Well, let's say he's not in the mood. Okay, I'll be you and you be your son, Ray. Okay. Will you play with me here for a second? What's your son's first name, if you don't mind?
His name is Cayenne.
Cayenne? Yeah. So Cayenne, I can tell you're getting pretty frustrated with the homework thing. It's, you work hard in school all day long, and then you come home and, teacher expects it, and then we get on your case about it. And that probably stinks for you, doesn't it?
Yeah, it totally stinks. Homework is stupid.
Yeah. I mean, what do you hate about it the most?
Everything. I mean, why do we even have to go to school?
Yeah.
We shouldn't have to go to school.
Yeah. Ridiculous, right? Ridiculous.
Yeah,
Work all day
absolutely.
in school and then come home and do more schoolwork. Yeah.
Yeah. I wish there was no school and no homework and none of this stuff, and I could just play Roblox.
Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be great if we just had summer vacation all year long and you could just chill with your Roblox?
Exactly. And like you wouldn't have to work either. Like it would be perfect.
It would be amazing. Just think about how the stress level, for you and for us, it would come way down, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Exactly. So why can't we do that?
Boy, oh boy, that would be nice.
Okay, so we're going to do it now, right?
Well, you know what? And no, a little stage whisper to everybody here. Notice the pause, okay? The pause is very, very, very important. And parents need to be comfortable with silence. The pause is the parent giving the child the opportunity to entertain in fantasy what obviously can't be granted in reality. So as a parent, when we're empathizing, we can let kids fantasize. We can fantasize along with them. It would be nice if there was no homework, if it was summer vacation all the time, wouldn't it? But granting something in fantasy does not mean we can grant it in reality. So, buddy, Cayenne, if you want right now, we could do some problem solving about it. And we could see if we could come up with some solutions. And so let me make sure I understand. For you, the problem is you just burnt out about homework. You come home every day and there it is, and then you got us yakking at you about it. Is that pretty accurate, or is there something, Cayenne, that you'd say differently about it?
Yeah, because homework is stupid.
Yeah, and I write that down. Homework is stupid, and I do this on a legal pad or on the computer screen. I'd write down with an S, say what the problem is, Cayenne's formulation of the problem. And then I'd say, you know what, Cayenne, I don't like this either, man, because it's stressful for me. And I'd write down Dad, I'd write, I don't like having to remind you about homework. It's frustrating for me. And Cayenne, what number would you give this? If 0 is no problem, 10 is the worst imaginable. 1 to 3 mild, 4 to 6 medium, 7 to 9.
100.
Yeah, it's like off the charts, right? Well,
Yes.
10 is as high as we can go, so we'll put 10. That's and you know what? I'm gonna give it a 9 because this is a big source of frustration for me too. So I think
So you agree that homework is stupid?
I think it's a huge problem for our family. I agree with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're not doing homework anymore. Hey, Dad said we don't have to do homework anymore.
Well, you know what? Let's write that down because I think we're ready to go to possible solutions here. Let's write that down. No more homework. And that's going to be at the top of the list. That's one idea. And you know what? I think we're off to a good start thinking about all different possible solutions to this homework problem. You know, no more homework. I wonder if we can think of some other possible solutions besides
What
that.
about if I get dessert every time I get a problem right?
Good. We got it rolling here now, man. Dessert for every correct problem. Now, I am deliberately.
No, actually dessert every time I try.
Oh,
'Cause you
dessert
always tell
every
me all
time
I
I
have to do is my
try.
best.
I'm going to write that down too. And you make the child believe that you are taking their ideas seriously by writing them down.
Okay.
And we keep the child going until they run out. So, Cayenne, do you have any other ideas? I'm really pleased with how you're tackling this.
There's only like one day that I have to do homework, and the other days I don't have to do homework.
Yeah, 1 day homework, no homework, any other days. I'd write that down. How about anything else, man? Because I want to make sure that I've got all of your ideas down.
You can give me more allowance.
More allowance. Would that just be for existing, or would that be tied to your homework?
I want just more money, and then even more money if I do homework.
Okay, so you get base pay of a certain amount, and then you get bonus pay for homework. Let's write that down.
Okay.
And so on. Okay, I get the feeling that Cayenne's
He's listening right now.
yeah, Cayenne would be giving some very, very good suggestions about this, and we would respect those suggestions. Maybe we'll have Cayenne participate in this. But then it would be.
He's not hearing you right now, so.
Okay. Then it would be after Cayenne's listed as many solutions as he can. Then it would be Dad's turn to list some solutions. And how about in the chat box? How about in the chat box, the typical parent-centered solutions for homework resistance? Let's fill up the chat box. Let's do a group think here now, not put Ray on the spot too much, but everybody just flood the chat box, okay? Go for it with things that would be on the possible solutions list for Ray as he's thinking about, well, what would work for me on my perspective with the homework? So we got them coming in. Do your homework, get screen time. Keep it coming, people. Yeah, 30 minutes of homework time with parent 2 days a week. Keep it coming. I need some more. Need a longer list of possible solutions. 1 day per week without rules. Homework and more Roblox. Homework certain hours and no homework in the later evening. Keep it coming. Log so many hours. Right after school homework, if it's finished, this a first then kind of approach. Okay, now we got it rolling. Okay, so the idea is to have as many possible solutions to homework frustration as possible. Then and only then, you and Cayenne would go through the possible solutions and rate them. Then you'd first ask Cayenne for a number. What about this one? He gives a 5, you give a 0. What about this one? He gives a 0, you give a 5. What about this one? He gives a 2, you give a 4, and so on down. And then you go through the red, yellow, and green and see where you found common ground. And you might find you're agreeing on some things that surprise you, that, hey, that'll be better than the status quo.
Oh, he got excited in the chat seeing the answer of get to play video games after homework, because that is something that he really, really wants.
It's on the table for discussion, but it has to be okay with both parties involved. So Ray, you are obligated to respect Cayenne's rating of the possible solutions, but he's obligated to respect yours as well. This is not permissive parenting. This is not authoritarian parenting. This is democracy. hey, where do we find common ground? And we teach the concept of compromise. And we compare a solution that's not your 5, but we compare your 3 to the status quo and teach that even if things can't be miraculously better, they can be better. Get away from all and none thinking. So Ray, I really appreciate you, volunteering, letting me volunteer you for going through that. But it's such a common one. It gave me an opportunity to demonstrate this real time. So
Thank you. That's a great
give it up
example.
to Ray, everybody. Yeah. So
Awesome.
thank you, Ray. I hope that helps. Niles, I see a hand up, and if anybody can monitor the chat box for me too after Niles, that'd be great. But, go ahead, Niles. Oh, Niles is just clapping. Okay, fair enough. Any other questions? If I could use some help trolling the chat box for any questions, or if anybody has a hand to raise, or I can go into the second example that I prepared for tonight there, but I see Fiona. Go ahead, Fiona, unmute yourself, and you got the mic. Hi.
Good evening. Okay, so I have twins and they're 8 and trying to get
They're
them to
both
do
8.
yes, a boy and a girl. And trying to get them to do chores is just over the moon, with tantrums, kicking the vacuum, knocking this down, being whiny, and yeah.
Yep. So at 8 years old, now twins are not ever identical. Even identical twins are not identical, and right. And the twins might have a different capacity for this problem solving. They might be, have different levels of motivation, language skills, processing skills. Their ADHD might affect them differently. One might have it, and one might not. So whether you can do problem solving with the twins together or do a separate individualized approach is a parent's judgment. Usually, when in doubt, one-on-one is better. If in doubt, simplify. So you would do the same thing as Ray, and addressing one at a time. First, the empathic statement. Hey, I can tell you really hate it when I ask you to do chores. Tell me what you hate most about it. And that's a good lead question. You give the child permission to speak their mind. And then you empathize. I remember when I was a kid and I had to do chores, and right now when I have to do chores, I don't like it either. I'm not always in the mood. I'd rather do other stuff. I get it. And then pause. And then you'd sit down, maybe with them one at a time, and you'd problem solve it. First, the twins would give their view of the problem. I don't like it when mom assigns chores, and you would give your view of the problem. Well, there are certain chores that need to be done, and it's frustrating for me. Let's sit down, if not now, another time, and talk about possible solutions about chores. One would be the status quo. Well, we could continue to argue about it. Let's write that down. And Fiona, what other possible solutions might the kids suggest, and might you suggest regarding chores? You can speak for yourself and for your twins and generate, 3 to 5 possible solutions just off the top of your head. And then those of you who are dealing with chore troubles, or those of you who can imagine it, how about if we fill up the chat box with possible solutions regarding chore wars, okay? What could be, maybe, possibly, solutions? But Fiona, it's your issue. You get to go first.
My daughter would say, why don't you just hire someone?
Let's write that down. Hire somebody to do the chores. We've got one possible solution on the list. Now, I'm taking a neutral tone. I'm not saying great idea or we can't afford that. I'm writing it down. Neutral. Now, if you're thinking, well, that's never going to happen. Who's going to pay for that? Or we can't, in the next step, examine possible solutions. You could give that a big fat 0 if you want to. But when she suggests the problem, you keep the neutral face, and you are wanting to encourage engagement with the problem-solving process. If you express your negative first reaction to a solution suggested by your daughter, it'll shut down the process, and she won't have an opportunity to get around to entertaining some more realistic solutions. So what else, Fiona, would pop to her mind or your mind as a possible solution for chores?
Both of them would probably say, that's your job, mommy.
Yeah, so mom does all the chores. That's one possible solution. Now, by the way, when it comes around your turn to list possible solutions with your kids, you can say, kids do all the chores. You can list that, or variations on the theme, right? So everybody's ideas go. Neutral listing first. What else, Fiona, comes to mind?
For myself, I would say, if, weekends, on weekends, we do the chores.
It was for weekends, and you could get more specific about even what time on the weekend, or they could have a choice about when, etc. So let's see in the chat box, we've got, so the point is finding common ground with this problem-solving method. Exactly, Steve. Thank you for summing it up so well. Do I see any other possible solutions to chores in my chat box? I guess not. Come on, people. Fill up the chat box. Fiona needs your help. Possible solutions to chore wars. Don't leave her hanging. While they're writing here, do your chores, earn screen time, money, trip to store. So again, a first then reward-based approach might motivate. Choose the chores you like from a list. Give them some degree of choice, even if they can't get out of it totally. Chore chart, magnets or dry erase. The children decide when they want to do. Again, the idea of giving some control to a child who is feeling controlled by their parent, shifting that locus of control to a degree anyhow, and so on. So it's late at night. So you get the idea. Here, stop doing chores at all and see how they like it. If you stop doing the chores,
They'll be fine with it. They just walk over their clothes.
Maybe. So
they don't care here till they get hungry, and no plates, no spoons, no nothing.
Yeah, so you would give that a low number when in the next step, E, examine possible solutions, and that would probably be in the trash can as a possible solution. But you get the idea.
What do you do when they, because I noticed with them, money may work one time, like a week, and then it's like, I don't care. Then I'm like constantly trying to switch because they're just like, I don't care after a while. And people say, try the stickers. My kids don't care about stickers. They don't care about dry erase after like one day. It's boring to them. It's like the ADHD every day. I feel like I have to think of something different because they'll tell me, I don't care about money. I don't care about that.
Yep. Yeah, let me make two radical statements, Fiona, okay? Radical statement number one, rewards and punishments are highly overrated. You're just giving one set of reasons why they don't always work consistently. So I'll let you all chew on that radical statement. Better a collaborative problem-solving model where a kid owns the solution than using rewards as a standalone. My second radical idea about this is that rewards can have a place for kids who live very much in the moment. They don't connect the dots between cleaning up my room now and being able to find my stuff later, or doing my homework now, and being able to have the life that I'm capable of having. So kids with ADHD sometimes need immediate reinforcement because ADHD is a problem with living too much in the present, not considering enough past experience, not considering enough future consequences. So Barkley teaches that if you want a reward to work for somebody with ADHD, it has to come very soon after the point of performance. If it's delayed, it might not be effective at all. It has to be immediate. So the larger radical point I'm making about rewards, just to give one example of what I mean, is rewards often fail when they're not sufficiently customized. One way to customize rewards is making sure they're sufficiently immediate to make sure that they respect a child's profile. Another thing typical of kids with ADHD is they crave novelty. And having the same darn reward over and over loses its spice, especially for somebody with ADHD. So novelty, newness is more motivating for many kids with ADHD. I'm using my words carefully because I don't want to lump all ADHD kids together as if they're all the same. But for many kids with ADHD, for example, it's more rewarding to have a dial spin and land on some reward on a Wheel of Fortune thing. What am I going to get? Or a grab bag. What am I going to get? Or a surprise reward. What am I going to get? Then the same old thing over and over again. It gets stale. So if a reward does not modify behavior, then it's not a reward. B.F. Skinner, one of the fathers of behaviorism, famously said that if a reward does not modify the behavior, it's not a reward. So rewards are defined only in retrospect by how well they worked, not by how well a parent thinks they should work or how comfortable a parent is supplying it. The data have to change. The frequency of the behavior has to track in a favorable direction, or else, hey, that reward's not working. Either we should bag reward systems altogether, my radical statement number one, or the reward needs to be more custom designed, my radical statement number two. Great question, Fiona, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Anything in the chat box, my Chad friends? Chad chat.
I've tried to comment in the chat, but I'm having some trouble. I don't know if there's an admin who can help.
There is. What is it, Ray? What is it? Go ahead and speak out.
Well, I don't even remember the response anymore. It was earlier when you were asking for parents to give examples of how they'd handle the situation. But I'm also just, I don't know if somebody in the chat can help me, if an admin or if somebody can help, because I'm not able to access the chat
Okay,
anymore.
if somebody can respond to Ray, that would be great. Thank you. But I think I might go ahead then with my second example, just to show another way that this works. So let's bring up the old PowerPoint again and blow this baby up. Blow up, there we go. Example number 2, after I take a sip. What the whittle? Okay, family frustration and stress. I got this email. This was during the pandemic, but it could apply about anything. Timmy just walked out of the Zoom classroom. He missed the early directions and then couldn't recover to pay attention or follow along. He felt lost and got so frustrated. I was on an important call for work. I wanted to help him, but I couldn't. How can I be there for my kids, do my own job, and not go crazy? So this was a problem that came to me during the pandemic, but it could be modified for back to in-school education to just be about attention for homework, et cetera. But just to get a feel for this again, some pessimistic generalizations. Timmy could say, I'm no good at this. I'm never going to catch up. Corona is going to mess up my whole life. Mom, this is impossible. Timmy needs a regular classroom. I could lose my job. What about my other kids? So instead of those pessimistic generalizations, we're going to give this empathic response. Hey, this is so different from real school. It's really hard, isn't it? And I'm feeling pretty frustrated too. And then the nonverbal show of empathy, the hug. And hey, the invitation to problem solve with a little humor thrown in. Houston, Houston, with a banana. We've got a problem, Timmy. When you feel like it, like in the line, I bet if we put our heads together, we can figure this out. And then the statement of problems in specific solvable terms for Timmy, the 5 W's. I don't understand the directions. The math teacher, the math class, it's in the afternoon. I get frustrated. It's an 8. And then the mom's definition of the problem, she does her W's. And this is shared with Timmy. She doesn't keep it to herself. They say it to each other and write it down to validate each other's perspective. Timmy keeps interrupting while I'm working. I've got the problem with Timmy and the teacher. I'm working at my desk. It's in the afternoon and I have an 8 because I'm getting angry and frustrated and it's affecting my work. And here we go with the possible solutions. They generated this list. I will not go through every one. You guys can read this, but I'm combining the think about step, the T and the E, and examine possible solutions. And Timmy first gives his rating, and then mom, then Timmy, then mom, then Timmy, then mom, all the way down. Just to give you one more example of how this works. And then we pick the possible solution, the best solution. The red for the 0s and 1s. The yellow, or here it appears brown, for anything that's 2 or better. And then green for solutions that have 3 or better. And we've got a bunch of greens. A bunch of greens. So Timmy and mom have a bunch of things they can pick from. And I'll often ask at this point, which of these greenies do you think are the best? And I might bold those and say, well, let's go with those. Which ones could we do together? And then let's try it and see how it works. So this family systems approach to problem solving can be used for what do we want to do this weekend if there's more than one child? What do you want for dinner if there's more than one child? For certain sibling conflicts. So my kids used to hate it when we had the inevitable, Friday night or Saturday morning. What are we going to do this weekend? I'd pull out my legal pad and I'd write their names across the top. I write Ben, AJ, Aaron, Barry, and then Dad and Mom. And they'd roll their eyes and I say, oh, or we could just do nothing this weekend. Let's write that down. Do nothing this weekend. Have arguments about what to do this weekend, or we can list some more solutions. So then they would call them out, go skating, go for a walk, stay at home and watch a movie, do nothing, etc. Each one would have a chance to contribute to the problem solutions list, or that would go, down the left column here, okay? And then under each name, I'd say, okay, go skating, 0, 3, 2, 1, 4, 7, for 5. Okay, there's no such thing as 7. And we'd go across and I'd call it out. There's no discussion. This is the radical idea for this problem solving. There's no discussion at all, no debate. It's just each person giving their opinion, not defending it, not trying to sell it. And then you look for the common ground. And that's how you demonstrate collaborative problem solving for a whole family doing it together. And pick stuff that's simple for starters before we get into the deep sibling conflicts to demonstrate how this stuff works. Any thoughts, questions, real life, I don't think so, Doc, kind of comments anybody wants to make? I'll share one comment myself. One reason that you might have difficulty doing collaborative problem solving with a child who has ADHD is if you are trying to do collaborative problem solving when your child's medication is not on board. What I call a trough problem. Your child might do great with their long-acting medication through the day, but it might fall off. And that's when we might be having our conversations with our kids. So we do trough filling. We even out medication coverage because treatment of ADHD with medication is not just about academic performance, it's about life. It's about family functioning, social functioning, non-academic learning. And good luck trying to have as good a problem-solving session with your child if their ADHD is untreated versus treated. just a caveat to drive home the initial point I made about non-pharmacologic management by itself won't be nearly as effective, might not be effective at all, as the combination of this kind of collaborative problem-solving teaching, behavior management, educational care, all those psychosocial interventions that I believe so strongly in, and that's what my parent-child journey behavior management training program is all about. It won't be as good unless you combine it with medication. Sure.
Dr. Shapiro, I just noticed a question from earlier that I'm not sure if you answered or not. My son has been disruptive in class, talks over and arguing with his teachers. Since I'm never there, how do I work with him to develop a solution? I thought that was
Great question to bring in. How do we do, in the context of tonight's conversation, how do we do collaborative problem solving with the school? We have a meeting, and it might or might not include the child, or we can at least represent the child's position to the teacher. That's a judgment to make whether to include the child in the discussion. Maybe not the initial discussion, but at some point in the way, the child should be included, I strongly believe, at a developmentally appropriate level. And we'd ask, hey, what are the W's about the breakdown point at school? What's the problem? When does it happen? Where? Who is it with? And why is it a problem for the child? Why is it a problem for the teacher? Let's analyze it. Let's see what those antecedents are. Let's see what that triggering situation is. And then let's come up with a list of possible solutions, parent, teacher, and child. And then together, with the teacher, with the child, with the parent, come up with best guess about what's going to work that's mutual and therefore durable, and then have a follow-up conversation about it. This is rich, this technique, when it comes to problem solving across environments.
Another question.
And I see Melis has a hand up too. So maybe we'll give Melis
sorry.
and Cheryl, and then the next
Okay,
question.
one more question and then you can do the hands up. How do
Okay.
you get the child to get out of the habit of black and white thinking? If I ask my son how bad it is, he always says a 10.
Yeah, that's a great question. And here, I really do recommend Seligman's book, Learned Optimism, and Dweck's book, Mindsets, which really talks about how to teach kids out of this black and white, rigid kind of a mindset. One way to do this is through this exercise. When we do collaborative problem solving with kids, we're teaching them that, hey, maybe things are not quite as bad as you thought. Maybe there are different ways of stating problems using the 5 W's. And teaching the kids away from the never, always, nobody, everybody generalizations about their lives. And the kids who are old enough, we can be very transparent, very explicit about the difference between an optimistic mindset and a pessimistic mindset, between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. These are concepts that are taught across school systems, across the world. So some kids just need the language. They need the 1s through 9s between the 0s and 10s. So a kid who always 10s, I will, without sarcasm, say, well, if doing homework is a 10, what number would you give our house burning down? To impress upon them, and I'm in all seriousness with the child. I'll say, I'm going to say something really scary just to make a point that even though 10, it seems like a 10, the homework problem, there are some things that would be even worse than that. And this is how we get a little wedge between the child and the 10. And that's one approach, is to talk about relative crumminess. that all crumminess is not created equal. Some things are crummier than others. Really great question. And this, for some kids, is the stuff of therapy with a professional. The child who is so rigid, where you do need some professional help, treating what might be underlying depression or anxiety. Depression, irritability, anxiety are all, part of the same coin, different sides of the same coin. Depression is feeling distressed with what's past. Anxiety is feeling distress about what might happen in the future. Irritability is distress about what's happening right now. But it's all emotional inflexibility, emotional reactivity. It's all the same mindset that, hey, I can't do anything about this. I'm trapped. And we can label that. And hey, do you want your 10 to be the boss of you, or do you want to be the boss of it? And we can use the language of control to appeal to many kids who have inflexibility as a primary part of their profile. Great question. Thank you for asking it. Melis, thank you for your patience. Go right ahead, please.
Thank you. I wanted to ask, and it was going to be a great segue when you started talking about ongoing ADHD and not treating it the right way. And the title of the session was Teaching Problem Solving to Children and Adults with ADHD. So if the adult in the family...
Actually, it was supposed to be children and adolescents, but it's the same. Okay. It's the same thing, though. It's the same thing. It could just as well have been called children, adolescents, and adults. It's the same principles. But Melis, can you elaborate on your question for me, please?
Yes. So my question is, how would the adult in the family, if the adult also has ADHD, or if the adult is the person with the ADHD, because, making a decision for someone with ADHD is not always the easy thing. So for working on problem solving with a child, with an adult who also has ADHD, what recommendations do you have for the adult in that equation to be able to come up with the right solution at the last step of steps and throughout the whole problem solving system?
Melis, that's a fantastic question. Thank you. Dr. Cronus Toscano at the University of Maryland has done some fascinating work about parallel treatment for ADHD children and adults. And when you sign up for her study, I'm not sure if it's still open anymore, but she's published. If you just treat the kids for their ADHD with medication, behavior therapy, child-centered approaches, there'll be improvement. But if you treat the kids and the parents, that's payday. That's when you really affect the family system. And treating the parents can mean, if the parent has a legitimate ADHD issue of their own, with medication and with cognitive behavioral therapy of the kind I've demonstrated tonight for the parent. You skill up the parent as you skill up the child. You scaffold up the conversation between parent and child until the child and the parent internalize it. It becomes habitual. It becomes a new vocabulary. It becomes a new way of approaching issues. Then you withdraw that scaffolding, that support. So a lot of families should be supported in a more holistic way than they are. I think so much ADHD treatment is so exclusively child-centered that, Melis, you asked a great question about the importance of taking seriously a parent's own challenges with ADHD, executive dysfunction, because you're absolutely right. It is harder, not impossible, but it's harder for an ADHD parent to do this kind of thing with an ADHD child than it is for a non-ADHD parent to do it with an ADHD child. Both are challenging, but one's more challenging than another. And just as, kids deserve support, so do parents. And that's why I don't just prescribe medication. I do parent training. in behavior management, which talks a lot about the parent's own challenges, their own feelings, their own profile. Until the parent understands what they bring to the table, it's awfully hard to be as effective in interacting with their child. So I'm a real believer in family systems approaches to all interventions for children. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great question.
Could you put the name of the doctor you mentioned in the chat, the study?
Yeah, no, I don't know again if her study is still open, but you can certainly check out her research. And I believe I'm spelling this correctly. Tronis Toscano at University of Maryland in the psychology department. She's
thank you very much for your answer.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thanks for your question. Now I see it's getting towards 8:30 and the hour is nigh, but I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you all. And any closing questions or comments from my Chad friends?
No, this has been an amazing experience, and you have provided so much information and resources for our community. And I just really loved everything that you had to provide in your lecture, and also for the people here with, questions. And I don't know, I think it's amazing. So I just want to thank you so much, Dr. Shapiro, for all that you've done to provide
Very
information,
kind. Thank you.
resources, and community to those in need in the ADHD community.
Well, thanks for having me. It's truly my pleasure. And what a wonderful group of parents. I appreciate the great questions and conversation. And I wish you all the best of luck. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us tonight.
Hi.
Sorry, one quick question before I go. I don't see the Dr. Shapiro's chat has come through with the name of the doctor at the University of Maryland with the study. Well, I guess I can listen to the recording just to get her name to look her up, right? Or do I not see it on the chat and you guys can?
Well, if you mentioned it in the video recording, you will have the chance to listen to it again.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're so welcome.
I was listening very carefully. I was trying to hear him when he was spelling it, but I don't know if I'll be able to hear it in the recording. I have the same issue.
I couldn't hear who was talking, but it's great to hear somebody else have the same issue.
Of course.
Yeah, I've had the chat issue the whole time.
So I wanted to see, I know I had sent a message. It was a little difficult for me to send to all, but I guess the way I registered, I want to make sure that I get the slides because I did it through the meetup group versus Eventbrite. So
More than likely you're on the register, and so we will be able to provide you that information. It should go. It's the same Zoom. If for any reason that you don't feel that you have received it by the end of the week, we have an email that you can reach out to us.
okay.
And that, what name are you? I'm just like, there's so many people still.
Judy Hairston.
Judy here. Oh, okay. Here we go. I'm going to send you our email.
Yeah, I put put my email in the chat too, so, okay, thanks.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight.
You're welcome. I do kind of see this apply because I you know, I don't have children, but, you know, dealing with some people, and I see this that could be applied. I have a uncle with dementia. So
Mhm.
I think some of these steps could apply there as well.
Agree. I totally agree. Have a wonderful evening, my dear.
Thank you. Good night.
I'm still taking a few people out. Mm. We're almost there. Okay. It's just us now. That was an amazing lecture, I have to say.
That was great. Did we or did he just go out?
A lot of times they don't know to stay in, so, and they like, our lecturers just like ditch out, gone,
So
I thought it was great. It's a very interesting perspective that I don't hear about a lot.
yeah.
And I like how he wanted to be connected with the people. So there's
Definitely.
a lot of interaction,
Mhm.
real-time question and answers, and that happened really fast. So that, I just think that's so beneficial.